All right, question 2. Why, after God's explosive tirade to Job during the whirlwind speech, does God make this 180-degree turnaround and reward Job? All right, the answer I've received from Christian apologists is that God rewards Job for keeping his integrity, in the sense that, well, Job doesn't curse God, and because God is merciful. Job's rewards are symbolic of God's forgiveness and the way that suffering can ultimately enrich our lives when we bear that suffering with patience, with strength, and trust in God. All right, the answer from Jack Miles is that God was making up to Job for having been too severe with him. This is an excerpt from God, a Biography, page 312. Does the Lord regret what he did? If the Lord has nothing to apologize for, he would also have no reason to give Job twice what he had before. But, as we saw in 2 Isaiah, when the Lord promises double compensation, he implies that his own actions have gone too far. The Lord's action here, if not explicit repentance, is unmistakable atonement and implicit repentance. Now, from the multi-author theory, of course, nothing puzzling at all about God lambasting Job in chapter 41 and then rewarding Job in chapter 42. These two chapters were written by two different people telling two different stories. And if the book had a final editor, she or he didn't revise very well for consistency. Okay. Now, as mentioned in part 1, there are those few sentences in the last chapter that just don't fit neatly into this multi-author theory. And this is Job 42, verse 7 through 11. And these passages, they include author 1's element of God speaking highly of Job and author 2's element of Job's critical friends. Now, some people may see these passages as evidence against the multi-author theory, but I see them as almost an incoherent editorial attempt from a third party maybe to try to tie author 1's story and author 2's story together. But I say incoherent because, well, these passages say that God's wrath is now at Job's 3 friends for not speaking rightly about God. And God said this is unlike Job, who did speak correctly of God, according to Job 42, verse 7 through 8. But now, why would God say that Job spoke rightly about him when God was just so mad at Job in the previous chapter? And Job was so critical of God's indifference to justice, saying things. Job said that God just laughs when calamities crush the innocent, Job 9, verse 23. So why would God approve of that? And then why would God say that the friends spoke wrongly of God when Job's friends' main focus was on how glorious and righteous God is? So this is why I feel this section is something of a sloppy attempt by maybe a third party to try to tie these two stories together. But luckily this passage is very brief. All right, now some people who analyze the book of Job will say that it's unnecessary to attribute differing viewpoints to different authors. And they say that it's just as likely, and maybe more so, that the book of Job was just written by a solitary author who wanted to write a complex story with no easy answers, but just give fair and articulate and complete as possible treatment to different viewpoints. And the controversy involved in letting readers come to different conclusions is just one of the aspects that makes it a compelling story. But to me, the story not only contains different characters giving articulate explanations of radically different philosophies, it also contains many aspects that are just incompatible with coherent storytelling. I mean, Satan's just a major character in chapter 1 and 2. And is not only missing from the next 40 chapters, he just disappears without any trace, any explanation. Satan is the one that brings evil upon man in chapters 1 and 2. But then it's God that causes evil, according to chapter 9, verse 24. God is almighty and all-powerful in chapters 38 through 41, but God allows himself to be manipulated in chapters 1 and 2. God expresses anger at Job for his irreverence in chapters 38 through 41, but in chapter 42, God says Job spoke rightly of God. Now, the crucial evidence, of course, that's missing from this multi-author theory is that there is, again, no physical evidence for it. As I mentioned in part 1, I'm not aware of any pre-biblical documents that tell author 1 and author 2's stories separately. So I won't say with anything close to 100% confidence or even 80% confidence that this multi-author theory is correct. It's just that from the point of storytelling, I feel it's the only way that the book of Job makes sense. Thanks for watching.